In the heart of downtown Los Angeles, nestled between towering boutiques and upscale cafes, sat a newly opened luxury skincare store. The brand, called Radiant Bloom, had recently taken the beauty world by storm, promising products that celebrated diversity and real beauty. The store, sleek and modern with soft cream interiors and polished golden fixtures, drew an elite crowd. But despite its inclusive branding, not every customer was treated the same. It was a sunny Saturday morning when Brielle Thompson walked into Radiant Bloom's flagship store. Brielle was tall, confident, and elegantly dressed in a sharp cream blazer, natural curls framing her face like a halo. Her skin glowed, and her posture radiated grace. She approached the display shelves, scanning through serums and moisturizers. What no one in the store knew yet was that Brielle wasn't just any customer. She was the CEO and founder of Radiant Bloom. However, the moment she stepped in, Brielle noticed the shift in the atmosphere. A young sales associate named Caitlin, blonde and immaculately made up, watched her closely from behind the register. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and she quickly leaned over to whisper something to her coworker, Madison. Brielle ignored the stares. She was used to people underestimating her. She continued browsing, carefully checking ingredients and packaging, part of her weekly routine to ensure quality control. But before she could reach for one of the facial oils, Caitlin briskly approached her. "Excuse me, miss," Caitlin said, her tone falsely sweet. "Can I help you with something?" Brielle smiled politely. "Just browsing for now, thank you." Caitlin didn't leave. "We usually serve by appointment," she added, glancing down at Brielle's shoes as if trying to assess her status. "Do you have one today?" "No, I didn't realize I needed one," Brielle replied, still calm. "Is the store not open to the public today?" Madison joined in, her arms crossed. "It is, but we've had some issues recently. We try to control the crowd for security purposes." Brielle knew what they were doing. She was no stranger to this kind of passive-aggressive behavior. Still, she kept her composure. "I understand. I'll just be quick then." Madison stepped in front of her subtly. "Actually, we might need to ask you to leave unless you have a scheduled visit." Brielle raised an eyebrow. "And if I don't?" Caitlin hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. "It's just our policy. We're trying to maintain the brand's image." That sentence hit like a slap. The brand's image. A phrase she had once used in boardrooms, now turned against her. Brielle stood her ground. "Is that policy written somewhere?" "I'd like to see it," Caitlin faltered. "I mean, it's just how we do things." The manager, an older man named Greg, overheard the tension and came over. "Is there a problem here?" "Apparently, yes," Brielle said, her voice still composed. "Your team doesn't seem to think I belong here." Greg looked her over, then turned to Caitlin and Madison. "Ladies, what's going on?" Madison spoke quickly. She came in without an appointment and started touching the displays. Brielle laughed softly, the first break in her restraint. "I'm the founder of Radiant Bloom. I created those displays." Greg blinked. Caitlin and Madison looked stunned. "I'm sorry?" Greg asked. "My name is Brielle Thompson. You can check the corporate website if you'd like, or the news, or any major beauty magazine from the last 6 months." There was a long silence. Greg awkwardly pulled out his phone and did a quick search. His face paled as he turned the screen toward the girls. There, unmistakably, was Brielle in a Forbes article titled, "The Woman Behind Radiant Bloom, Brielle Thompson's Skincare Revolution." "Oh my God," Caitlin whispered. I didn't recognize you," Madison stammered. "You didn't try," Brielle replied. "You just assumed." Greg stepped forward. "Miss Thompson, I sincerely apologize. This is completely unacceptable." "Yes," she said calmly. "It is." The energy in the room shifted. Other shoppers had paused, watching the scene unfold. Brielle could feel their eyes on her, but she wasn't embarrassed. She was empowered. "I designed this brand to empower people who look like me," she said, addressing the room now. It's clear the message hasn't reached everyone yet. With that, she turned and walked out. Outside, her phone buzzed. Her executive assistant had been watching the store via live camera feed. "You handled that like a queen," the text read. Brielle smiled. She already knew tomorrow's company-wide training memo would include a special new session. Respect, representation, and recognizing racism. As the news of the confrontation began to circulate online, the video of Michelle being mistreated in her own store spread like wildfire. Uploaded by a bystander who recognized her from a recent Forbes feature, it was captioned, "Black woman CEO gets refused service in her own skincare store." By the time Michelle reached her office the next morning, her assistant James was already on the phone with multiple media outlets, and her inbox had exploded. Articles, interview requests, and apology statements from influencers who had once overlooked her were flooding in. But Michelle wasn't concerned about her personal image. She was thinking of the countless black women who weren't CEOs, who wouldn't have had a camera nearby or a platform to speak from. This wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability and change. "James, set up a meeting with the entire customer-facing team," she said, voice steady but firm. Later that afternoon, the employees gathered in the conference room. The same manager who had refused her service, Debbie, was there, along with the sales associates. Their expressions were mixed with confusion, shame, and fear. Most of them hadn't seen the viral video yet. Michelle stood at the head of the table. Gone was the casual dress from the day before. Today she wore a sharp navy suit, her natural curls framing her face like a crown. She tapped the remote and played the video on the large screen behind her. Gasps, shifting in seats. Someone muttered, "Oh my God." "That was me yesterday," Michelle said calmly after the video ended. "You didn't recognize me, and that's not the problem. The problem is how I was treated. Not because I looked suspicious, not because I acted out, but because you saw a black woman and assumed she didn't belong." The room fell silent. "Debbie," she said, turning to the manager, "how long have you worked here?" 2 years, Debbie said, her voice barely audible. "And how many times have you spoken with me?" Debbie hesitated. I don't think we've ever spoken directly." "That's part of the problem," Michelle said. "You didn't take the time to know who your employer was, who built this brand you represent every day." She walked slowly across the room, making eye contact with each person. "Let me make this clear. This isn't just about me. It's about every customer who walks through our doors, every person who's felt unseen, unvalued, unwelcomed. That ends now." Michelle implemented immediate changes. Diversity and inclusion training became mandatory, not just as a one-time seminar, but as a continuous program. Anonymous reporting systems were put in place for discrimination complaints. Hiring practices were reevaluated, and she invited experts and advocates to speak at monthly roundtables. But it didn't stop there. Michelle used the media attention to launch a campaign called Skin Deep, Soul Strong, focusing on empowering Black entrepreneurs, educating about implicit bias in retail, and sharing stories of racial profiling that often went unheard. She gave interviews on major platforms, always steering the narrative toward structural issues rather than personal grudges. "I don't want sympathy," she said during one. "I want change. I want young Black girls who dream of building something to know they're not crazy for believing they can. And I want every customer to walk into a store, any store, knowing they belong." Over time, the public saw her not just as a successful CEO, but as a leader who turned personal pain into a movement. Back at the store, things changed. Customers returned, more diverse than ever. The staff transformed. Debbie, humbled and committed to learning, stayed on and became one of the loudest voices for equity within the company. One day, as Michelle visited the flagship store, a young Black girl approached her. She had seen the video and followed the story. With wide eyes, she said, "I want to be like you someday." Michelle knelt down, smiled, and replied, "Be better than me. Be fearless from the start." As the girl walked away with her mother, Michelle looked around her store. her dream. She had built it brick by brick, challenge by challenge. And though racism tried to deny her entry into her own space, she claimed it back. Not just for herself, but for everyone who would come after her.